Hello and welcome to the Bigger Boat Podcast, the movie podcast where we go through Steven Spielberg's back catalogue one by one. And today is a very, very special day as we've gone on a podcast day out. We've gone on a little school trip.
Way!
Which has been very nice. So we've gone to see Jurassic Park at the Royal Albert Hall, accompanied by a live orchestra. And we also have a very, very special guest today, friend of the show, host of the Invisible London podcast, George Sanderman. Hello.
Hello. Hi. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you, Raj. How are you doing, mate?
This is exciting. Here we are. This is a lot more professional than I ever podcast, so I'm hoping I don't bring the standards.
Well, you're generally alone when you podcast, aren't you?
Oh, I talk to a... it's like a plastic ram's head I talk to. just to
get some inspiration.
Just to give a bit of atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely. Candlelight, I imagine, as well.
Yeah. But, so now I've got to talk to you two. So.
A bit of meatloaf in the background.
Yeah. I won't be able to be myself, so I've got to talk to you two.
That's absolutely fine.
My lovely plastic ram. But here we are.
And as always, creeping up slowly on my left, that clever girl, Jo Dawson. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Glad.
Well, I've actually spent all day with you.
That's true. Glad you haven't called the police on me yet.
Why?
Sneaking up on you.
Okay, fine. So we're going to do it a bit differently this time, in the fact that we're recording this all after we've actually seen the movie. So it's a slightly different format this time. But still, what we might do is we'll start off. So when we usually have a guest on, we talk to them about their first Steven Spielberg sort of experience. Because you specifically requested to do the Jurassic Park episode, didn't you?
Oh, yes.
Why was that?
Oh, I think it's the formative film of my life, I think. Oh, it's just such a visceral memory. I had my own money to go and buy action figures for it.
Yeah.
So I could get so involved with this film.
Did you see it at the cinema?
I didn't. I had to go and see it with my friend Sam Smith and...
Not that one.
All right, name dropper.
With my good friend Steven Spielberg. We went to see it when it was doing a run in... Can't remember. This is dreadful.
UCI, Portsmouth?
No, it was better than that. It was Chichester Festival Theatre. And it was one of these times, it was like £3 to show it, and it was after it happened. And I remember being so excited to see the film, and I can't believe my parents didn't take me to the cinema to see it. But we went to see it, and it must have been about October time, and all the roads were flooded, and we had to go through, like, there was water coming into the car trying to get there.
So sort of like the T-Rex scene in the movie.
Yeah, and it was all flooding in. Yeah. It was an ordeal to go and see it, but I remember, like, Sam and my friend had seen it before, and I got them to tell me absolutely everything all about it, and so I felt like I'd seen it already. But I bought a special gift. Always a big collector. These are my Jurassic Park cards that I collected at the time, and this is a full set. With the stickers as well, yeah.
Wow. I'll take a picture and obviously post it on Twitter. Wow, it's got every character, every fact.
Were these, did you have to buy these, or did they come in like cereal packets or things like that?
They came in little foil packs, sets of 6. And if I went out with my dad on a weekend, Saturday morning, and if I helped him with the shopping and all the other stuff he had to do when he went into town, my treat was a pack of Jurassic Park cards.
So these are like sort of Panoni stickers for the listeners.
Oh, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, indeed. Yes. Like,
and these are this is the complete range, is it?
This is the first set, because they actually did a second series.
Did they?
Which I'm trying to find on eBay.
That's really cool. Well. It's very geeky, but it's very cool.
Yeah.
Have you, if you've been looking for the second series on eBay, have you looked how much a complete first series collection is worth?
Oh, probably not much.
Okay.
It's like 14 quid.
No, 14 or 15 pounds.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was good time to be young.
Yeah, absolutely. Because dinosaurs sort of, well, for me, were you obsessed with dinosaurs when you were that age as well?
I wouldn't say obsessed, but yeah, I definitely was interested in them. I had a few dinosaur books and things.
Do you think that obsession with dinosaurs from the early 90s is because of Jurassic Park? Or, because I don't remember if it was before that or because of Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I feel like it was heightened by Jurassic Park, but I think there was interest in it before.
I guess we do get taught it in primary school, don't we?
Yeah.
I seem to remember we did.
Yeah, I'm sure it was just Jurassic Park that got me into it.
Well, hang on. I'm thinking back now. Fantasia, in the dinosaur sequence of Fantasia, I probably saw that when I was very, very young.
Sure.
Probably like 5 or something.
I guess The Land Before Time as well.
Land Before Time,
was just before Jurassic Park.
That, well, we had access to. I mean, Fantasia is older than us, but it's like, wow, what are these creatures? And then suddenly you realise they're not made up. They're not mythical creatures. They're actually real.
Did anyone else collect Dinosaur magazine?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. I remember getting so excited. I found like a whole load of back catalogues in a car boot sale for like 5p each.
Oh my days.
I got so excited.
Did you have the 3D T-Rex model?
I did, yes. Yeah, I did. Yeah. I did. And he had those. He came with the 3D glasses, the blue and red
still
ones.
Got those, yeah.
You still have them?
Oh, God, they've got to be somewhere. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I make sure my dad never throws anything away, and so I bet, like, definitely we've got that. Yeah.
Because you said you were also going to bring the giant T-Rex.
I was going to bring my T-Rex. Yeah, it was too big for my backpack. But no, because that was good. I remember
that being awesome.
I remember being in a toy shop and falling over backwards because it was so big, and just.
I literally fell over backwards.
Literally walking around the corner because they did the T-Rex and they did a junior T-Rex. And I remember seeing the junior T-Rex. I was like, oh my God, that's the biggest toy I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. And then right next to it was the T-Rex in the box, and I fell over backwards because it was just so exciting to see.
No one wants the junior
so
T-Rex.
Big. The problem was with it is that it was so big for the box. They had to fold over the tail.
Okay.
And so the tail always had a big kink in it. And yesterday,
was it like a plush thing then, or was it like?
Oh, it's like rubber. Okay. Made of so like a rubbery fin, and you squeezed its middle and it would roar, and the mouth would open.
Okay.
And the button they had inside felt like a rib, so it was really exciting.
Yeah. I was looking up some of the toys just before we went in to the Royal Albert Hall, and they set up. There was a whole bunch of the dinosaurs, and you could remove a certain part of the flesh, and a chunk out of it, and you could see like the ribs underneath and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. Which is so cool. Yeah. I loved any sort of toy where you could sort of like see behind, or like. Yeah, sorry to get off the Steven Spielberg topic a little bit, but one of my favourite toys was the Michael Keaton Batman, and he could slide on the Batman mask and put like the chest plate on to turn him into Batman. So cool. So I loved anything which had
two different figures in one. Yeah,
2 different figures in one.
Well, it sounds like you would have liked Transformers then.
Weirdly, I was not.
Because that's what you're describing, like something turning into like you're describing Transformer.
I quite liked them. But I love the reality of that Batman toy, to be honest, because it looks so much like him. And the toys in Jurassic Park, like the dinosaurs, were really good. They really look like the ones on screen.
But you mentioned that Timmy looked like Demi Moore, didn't you?
The humans didn't really look like each character.
No, they did
They look like a very generic man for Alan Grant or whatever. And Timmy, as they look more like one of the Beatles or Demi Moore. He wasn't wearing the right things.
No, he's in a white shirt.
Demi Moore.
Brown little shorts, yeah.
And they never made the Lex either.
Did they not make the Lex?
No. They but no, because the problem was they made the toy, or it's like a year to get the toys out, and I think they started making the toys before they finished the casting, and so
oh really?
They just were like, he'll probably wear a blue shirt at some point, so that'll do. And then, but they did do a second series where they went and retooled the figures. And they changed the look, and they actually made them look proper.
Demi Moore sued, and they said, "Little Timmy looks too much like me."
So I was watching. Do you guys watch any Tested videos? The Adam Savage series?
No, I don't know what that is.
Oh, so Adam Savage is one of the 2 Mythbuster guys.
Okay, sure.
And he makes like a huge Chewbacca suit or whatever, and goes and walks around Comic-Con or whatever.
Sure.
It's very cool.
Sounds it.
And they were at one of the Comic-Cons or something, and they had the shaving cream, which you could untwist.
The one that Nedry has.
Exactly, and you press this button, and it comes out with all of the individual little compartments to put the DNA in.
Yes, so for the listeners, this is the espionage equipment that gets given to Nedry that he can smuggle the dinosaur embryos out in, which is a shaving foam can that detaches.
And someone has made like a super, super good replica.
That's right, yeah. That is quite cool.
Probably hundreds of pounds.
Yeah.
As I say, when I have a greater disposable income,
you're going to buy one.
I'm going to buy that and shave with it.
It's a niche reference, but when soon as someone actually recognises it, it will pay off.
Yes. basically just you.
Yeah, exactly.
That and when we take the individual little bit off the toy dinosaur to see its ribs and all that stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's all going to pay off in the end.
It'll pay off, and I'll go, that wasn't a mistake.
If this is wrong, I don't want to be right.
So usually, George, what we do is we also talk about the last movie that we watched.
Okay.
And we'll do that quickly before, and then we'll crack on to talking about the film. George, what was the last film that you watched? Han
Solo.
Which coincidentally was the film Luke and I were watching when we came up with
the idea of the podcast. It's so poetic.
Of course, yeah.
Plot lines are coming together here.
Wonderful film.
Did you like it?
Yeah. All these Star Wars films that they're doing now I love.
Yeah.
But I sort of feel inclined to love them because I like Star Wars and I'm sort of apologist for it. But this one was just the most wonderful summer fun film.
You liked it?
And no one sort of bothered to go and see it, and it's a real shame because it was such a good film.
It got mixed reviews, didn't it?
Well, I think there's a bit of I think people are getting Star Wars fatigue because normally it was something that they were releasing every Christmas, weren't they? They released one of the new episodes, episode 7, and then they released Force Awakens, then episode 8, and then 6 months later they go straight in with Solo rather than spacing it out.
Personally, I quite like following the Skywalker family main films.
Yes.
And I'm less inclined to go out of my way to see the spin-offs. I have accidentally seen them all.
Yes,
but I just know I'm not as pumped up than when I know I'm going to watch one of the main 9.
Yeah.
Personally,
I quite enjoyed it. Alden Ehrenreich was very good as Han Solo.
Oh, he's wonderful.
He was really good, wasn't he?
Very charismatic, so handsome.
He was very handsome.
Right, Luke. So let me ask you, what's the last film you watched?
So I did some preparation for watching Jurassic Park. In fact, I watched the latest in the Jurassic Park / World franchise, Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, which is just now out on DVD as well. Have you guys seen it?
No, I've only seen the first.
You've seen it.
I've only seen the first one of this revamp.
Yeah. So for the audience at home, if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to talk about any spoilers because it is still pretty fresh. But it's directed by Juan Antonio Bayona, who is he's a film director in the sort of vein of Guillermo del Toro. Works very closely with him and does a lot of gothic sort of stuff. He did The Orphanage a couple of years ago, which was very good, and A Monster Calls a few years ago as well. It's an odd film in the fact that halfway through it changes tack entirely. It starts off on an island and there's a morality tale about should we save the dinosaurs from extinction because there's a volcano that's about to erupt. And then it switches to a haunted house movie halfway through.
Right.
And it's really strange. And that sort of change in tone is a bit jarring sometimes. He's a really accomplished director, and there's some really amazing shots. There's like a shot of a brachiosaur sort of being engulfed by a pyroclastic flow that made me cry.
Yeah.
And then there's
because it's in the same pose as the brachiosaur that they first meet.
Exactly, doing the same thing. And then at the end, like there's this particular type of raptor, and there's like which is stalking its prey, and it sort of comes up on the children like a little Dracula. You just see its output claw. There's some amazing shots in there.
Yeah.
But I cared much more about the dinosaurs than I did about the characters. The characters, there's no tension in there because you know all the good guys are going to survive.
Yeah.
And, well, I guess that is a bit of a spoiler, isn't it? But you know that from the beginning. So all the tension is completely... I found I wasn't worried about any of the characters, which is completely different from Jurassic Park or even The Lost World. When, there are stakes because bad things do actually happen to good people.
Yeah. So then to some extent you are just watching the good special effects and, surely it is trying to put you on edge.
It is trying. And actually, one thing it does which is different from like Jurassic World, which I wasn't a big fan of, is they do use a bit more of the models. They do try using puppets and things like that rather than just doing entirely CG.
Yeah.
But I just don't believe the characters. It annoys me in this series, in the new Jurassic World series, that the raptors are now the good guys. You know,
right?
When it's what that thing when a franchise goes on for too long, they always try and make the bad guy into an anti-hero, and they've done that with the Raptors here. You know,
it can never be beaten after Terminator. You know.
Yeah. No. Exactly.
When he's bad in the first one.
Yeah.
And
No.
Becomes good.
Exactly. It is completely different. So that does really annoy me.
Must resist talking about Terminator toys.
I think the whole thing is I read a review by Robbie Collin, the guy who does the reviews in The Independent, and he said it's going to be very difficult to make another dinosaur movie because Jurassic Park did it so well. Yeah. He made one of the perfect dinosaur movies from the very offset. So everything else that feels like comes since then feels
a pale imitation.
A pale imitation, exactly. Same with Jaws and shark movies.
Yeah, but having discussed a fair bit about Spielberg's technique and stuff, and we've literally just watched it.
Yeah,
there's so much to be said for the amount of tension that's built by not seeing the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, with this latest one,
go for it.
Is there too much dinosaur, or do they actually hold back and not reveal them too much?
When they're doing the tension-filled scenes, so one of the bad, the evil dinosaur in this, which is the main antagonist, is like this a genetic modification. It's an Indoraptor.
Yeah.
And whenever that is stalking its prey, you do see a claw here and there. You hear sounds rather than that. But for the rest of the animals, you do actually, I think, you do see them a bit more. But no, I think they do try, but I think because of the characterization and the way the plot's going, I think it loses tension from that point of view.
Yeah.
Because you have seen this type of movie before.
Because, it's amazing, isn't it, having just watched that film, how long you don't see any dinosaurs before.
Yes.
It's exactly the same case with Jaws.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it did feel like, it did remind me of it.
I didn't time it, but it probably was about halfway. Hang on.
It'll be about a third of the way through when you see the first brachiosaur, isn't it? That's the first one you see.
That famous shot with Sam Neill's glasses that we keep talking about.
Yes, yeah.
First big reveal.
But going back to Jurassic World, I think I don't know how you feel. I think it's worth watching, and I enjoyed it because it tries to do something different with the dinosaur movie. That whole house thing is different, and I'm not going to spoil it, but the end shot does have huge different implications for the franchise going forward, which I think could be interesting.
Yeah, it was. It's always exciting to go and see these films just because Chris Pratt's good fun, and to see those two.
Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yeah, hit off against each other, and it's fun. But there again,
they were better in this movie than I thought they were in the last one.
Yeah, and they were. The last one was a very odd, sort of weird film, and they had very specific scenes where you suddenly see a very sort of sexy shot of a car or something, and they were obviously like, right, we're going to do a Jurassic Park film, but also we need. We've got our investors who have paid some money, so we need to do.
I know Bryce Dallas Howard got a lot of flack for wearing high heels during the movie and having to do action sequences in high heels.
And, all of a sudden, Chris Pratt stops to drink a big Coke, and but it's it's always fun to see dinosaurs, and it was so nice to go back to an island and have that sort of adventure.
Yeah,
where it all goes wrong.
I remember what annoyed me is not even necessarily the dinosaurs and things, but in Jurassic World, they get into that bubble car thing.
Yeah.
And you're like...
That makes a repeat recurrence in this movie, yeah.
That does not work. You can watch that, and that's something they've designed which just would not work in reality. Would it?
Well, it doesn't go upstairs, does it? Like a Dalek.
Why not get that right?
Yeah.
Just a good toy, though, isn't it?
It is a good toy.
They've made
all about the money.
Yeah.
When it came to that ball thing, though, you could probably make your own. Just get a hamster wheel, put your action figure in it, roll it. Job done.
It's a good time at Joey's house.
Joey's trying to spread his wings onto the moneysavingpodcast.com.
Yeah, I'm like...
Come on, Martin Lewis.
I'm going to turn this into an episode of Blue Peter, where they made Tracy Island.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I'm going to make the island from Jurassic Park.
We're using just hamster wheels.
Yeah.
Should we talk about Jurassic Park now, watching it on the big screen? Because this was the first time that I saw this. I've ever seen this on a big screen. And it was quite impressive. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, we were just both saying, like, there's some amazing bits which you weren't even, or I had forgotten how they come across on the big screen.
Yeah.
For example, the bit with, it got a huge laugh.
It did, didn't it? I know what you're talking about.
Cut to a shot of Jeff Goldblum, open-chested, doing the Michael Jackson pose from one of his albums where he's got the little tiger on his knee.
Yeah, he'd just been injured and he was just recovering, and he was in his own recovery position.
Yes.
As some sort of sexy Lothario. He looked like some sort of Jeff Goldblum sex calendar,
so obviously
I own.
So obviously I wouldn't have laughed at that as a kid because I wouldn't have got the implications of any of it.
I think that got the biggest laugh in the...
Yeah. I think that's what it was. It was suddenly this big reveal of like, oh yeah, you know, he's doing his Jeff Goldblum
He's just being
thing.
so Jeff Goldblum-y.
Yeah.
He's become a bit of a parody of himself now, hasn't he? That it's extra funny.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, obviously I don't remember laughing at that when I was a little kid, and it doesn't come across on a small screen on DVD.
No.
But boy, did it go down on
an absolute treat. I was going to say, I saw on Twitter, there's a guy who works in a charity shop who has put in photos of Jeff Goldblum into all the empty picture frames in his charity shop.
I've seen that.
Have you seen that? And someone has just gone on Twitter going, look at all the picture frames in this show. It's just various sexy photos of Jeff Goldblum. If I can find it on Twitter, I will share that. I'll retweet that because that made me laugh very much. So, what were the scenes that sort of really works for you on the big screen?
It's got to be, having talked about this before, the Hitchcockian moments, the tension-building ones.
Are you talking about the raptor scene?
That's just a fantastic example of it, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a few other little moments before that, isn't there? Like, for example, the building of the tension is exactly the same when they pick up the cow and everyone's like, what's going on with that?
Yeah.
And then it just gets dropped and into the into all the leaves and stuff, and you don't see it.
Yeah.
That's working in exactly the same way. You just see the destruction before you see the animal. In the same way, you know, you see the hand and stuff on the beach in Jaws.
I think the scenes that really work are the two big set pieces, and these are the two set pieces that stayed in the script from the script changed quite a lot, but these are the ones that stayed in the script from the very, very beginning, and they wanted to build the movie around these two, and that is the raptor scene with the kids and the first attack of the T-Rex on the car.
Yes.
Those scenes are absolute masterclasses in tension, aren't they?
They are, and they are the first images which spring to mind when you think Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
It's because it's worked.
You talked about Hitchcockian sort of suspense. I think when we were talking about Jaws in the Jaws episode, what are the sort of tricks that Spielberg uses to generate that amount of tension in those scenes? So,
the Hitchcockian aspect of it is there's a big build-up, and there's certain things which build up in the first third of the movie, maybe even the first half of the movie, which are then paid off.
Used later,
Yeah. So, for example, it becomes quite a big theme, which becomes all the more apparent when you watch it on the big screen. Things wobbling.
Yes.
Water wobbling, tremors through the ground.
That was that. Yeah. But it is those things. It's the trees shaking, and then I think the bit you were talking about when the T-Rex first arrives, when Tim notices, well, it's that drum, isn't it? It's that doom.
Yeah.
And then you see the water and the ripple effect on the water.
Yeah.
And you see that slowly, and that you're right. That does get repeated each time. Same with drinks, but also when just before the raptor scene, the beginning of that is the picture of, which is one of my favourite close-ups. It's a picture of Lex holding jelly, which actually literally then starts to wobble, and then Lex's face just gets wider and wider and wider in fear.
Yeah,
that's one of my absolute favourites.
That's good, isn't it?
So that repeated motif of sound and followed by a little bit of shaking movement, and usually there's no other music happening at the time. It's usually just a bit of silence.
Yeah,
to build the tension.
Yeah, and the first half of the movie, you know how it gives you that feeling of sort of being let down. Because it puts you in the point of view of being in the child's perspective.
Yeah.
So they're all excited in the back of the car, like, yes, we're gonna see that goat get massacred.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen.
Yes.
We've all kind of experienced that, haven't we?
Yeah.
Like we've gone to Disneyland.
We've gone to see a goat massacre. We don't see it in the end. We've all been there.
Exactly.
Remind me to never go on one of your family holidays.
Family trip to the abattoir. So we're in familiar grounds because we've been there before in the first half of the movie, and we've been let down by it. which makes it all the more impressive which is the main theme of the movie is chaos theory, isn't it?
Yes.
Where life bursts out of the test tube, out of the restraints of the sciencey aspects where they're trying to control.
Life will find a way.
Exactly. Exactly. Luke, let me ask you.
Yeah.
Have you read the book? Because George and I have.
I have actually, but I can't really remember much of it. But I remember reading it when I was in my early teens.
Yeah, because there's huge sections of it, it almost doesn't mention dinosaurs for long sections of the book. And
there's quite a lot about chaos theory from what I remember, and more about corporate espionage as well.
It repeats a lot about computers and control and that sort of thing, and security.
Yes.
And then chaos theory features a lot. He seems to whole chapters are just it talks about you can control the plane but not the air. You can control the ship but not the sea.
It's very scientific. He's a doctor, isn't he, Michael Crichton?
He is.
Originally, so yeah.
So he also wrote ER, the TV series.
Yeah.
He was actually talking to Spielberg about developing a film,
That's
some
where
sort
they
of
first met.
medical drama, and it became the TV series ER.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, his book is really quite sciencey, but he's trying to get beyond it, isn't he, with the theme of life being uncontrollable, and all that stuff. And it is in there in that film, but I think you should have to look for it. That's certainly not what you come away from as a kid. You don't think of that as a theme. You just remember the dread, actually, I guess, of the size of the dinosaurs.
You're right. Yeah. Because at its heart, I think
you'd have to be quite an intense kid to worry about chaos theory when you watched it as a 7-year-old. But...
George, did you ever worry about that when you were growing up?
No, I used to worry about the T-Rex looking in through my window.
Yeah.
But because I'd practiced being very still, so you wouldn't see.
Did anyone else worry about?
I did that as well. It was when I was on the toilet because that. And it had such a profound fear affecting me that when I was on the toilet, I would just try and do it completely still, just because I was worried that something would come through, burst through, and then eat me. Yeah. Which is why I cried when I got The Lost World on VHS from my nana in 1997.
And things like, if you got a torch, did you worry you were going to shine it and suddenly you'd have a massive eye which would dilate?
Yeah. That dilation, I didn't realise how because when Lexi was shining the torch on the actual T-Rex eye, it does constrict and then dilate. It's amazing. I never really appreciated that. It
looks so real. That's clearly not remotely a CGI shot. That is a full-scale model. It looks so real.
They had to build the sets around the dinosaur. They made the dinosaur and then
realised the set wasn't too big.
Yeah, they couldn't move it.
Did they actually?
So it was just in one place, and then they put woods up around it so it could look like it was coming out of.
Have you seen any of that footage? Because apparently the full-scale T-Rex would do some very bizarre things because of the conditions. It was shot in
because of the rain.
Yeah, the rain. Yeah. It got soaked into.
They didn't realise it was waterproof.
Yeah, it got soaked into the latex skins, and then it would start shaking. And there is footage of it if you see some of the behind-the-scenes documentaries.
I think let's talk about that. But just for the listeners, in case they don't know, let's tell them how they did the visual effects a little bit. Yeah. So it was a real breakthrough in terms of computer generation and films going digital, and this is probably has a real flagpole in cinema history as being this is how blockbusters are going to be from then on in.
Yeah.
So they were initially going to plan to do it with just models, and stop motion, which is how many of the previous movies which used dinosaurs, going back to King Kong, had used beforehand. So they had a 20-foot Tyrannosaurus Rex that was 13,000 pounds. They made brachiosaur heads. They made the feet and things like that, and they were going to use stop motion. But while they were doing all the pre-production, ILM, so George Lucas's visual effects studio, came up with the thought of trying to do this more computer generated, and actually showed him some stuff they did. They generated it of the Gallimimuses, the little, is that how you say it? Gallimimuses. They made a shot of them running through a field, and he thought it was so photorealistic that they changed things completely.
Yes.
And production moved from that to being computer generated.
And have you heard the quote of what?
It was Phil Tippett.
Yes, Phil Tippett, who was in charge of the stop motion aspect of it, which was how they had planned to do it, as Luke has just said. Was it Steven Spielberg turned to him and said, "I think you're out of a job," and Phil
Tippett
turned to him and said, "Don't you mean extinct?"
Which makes it into the movie.
Yeah,
it was Jeff Goldblum.
Great line.
Says, it is, yeah. But they ended up reserving the services of that animation team, so they still use the models. So when you see the T-Rex, they ended up using them as puppets. And the Velociraptors were used as puppets, and what they did is they used the design of the actual puppets and then fed that information into the computer screen so they could animate them better.
Yes. So the skeleton. So it was basically essentially like a small scale skeleton, which they would move each frame.
Yeah.
And that had wires attached to it, which went to a computer, and it registered those movements.
Exactly. So even though it had moved to CG, apparently there was 14 minutes total of dinosaur visual effects in the whole Jurassic Park movie. Only 6 of the minutes are in full CG. The rest of them are actual practical effects.
Yeah.
Or puppets or animatronics.
That's cool.
Yes, yeah.
And then for some of the raptor shots and things, because of the size of them, some of those shots of their feet, for example, is a guy in a suit, basically.
Yeah.
That's a man's real legs inside dinosaur rubber.
So that is John Rosengrant and Crash McCreary, who are in raptor suits.
His name's Crash.
It's his nickname, Crash McCreary.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he is actually in a raptor suit. So it's not just his legs. He has actually got like a raptor head puppet on him, and he's operating the puppet himself. So George is just showing us that he's got his own little card in his card collection, Crash McCreary.
There he is.
Yeah, so shout out to them because they were the puppet masters.
He looks very rock and roll.
Because it was... I didn't know if this is true, but I've always just imagined it to be so.
Yeah.
George Lucas saw Jurassic Park and the work that ILM did, and that was the point where he said, we can actually start making...
Star Wars prequels.
One. Yeah.
Okay, oh dear.
Yeah,
so
like,
not all good stuff came out of this then.
Oh, you idiots.
I think Luke's just about to be stabbed. So, let me move on very quickly. Right, let me ask you, George, what moments worked for you?
My favourite bit in the whole film is when the T-Rex kicks down the fence and comes out into the road. And it is still today, I think, the best bit of computer-generated... Obviously, we've been talking about that before, but because you don't even think it's computer-generated, but this enormous animal comes out in between these two cars and roars, and
it's got so much weight, hasn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't look sort of glowy, it doesn't float like computer-generated things does, and it is just the most terrifying thing ever.
Yeah. It literally feels like it's coming at you somehow, doesn't it?
Because in I think it was 2012 or 2014, but there was an anniversary for Jurassic Park, and it was they released it in 3D, and I went with my wife Lisa, and she had not seen it as a film. I think on the big screen, and we saw it, and she was absolutely terrified, and I've never seen it in that eyes. It was always an adventure film for me and exciting and a bit perilous, but watching it with her, who was frightening, and it suddenly turned it into the most terrifying experience of my life, and it was a really wonderful way to watch it. And stuff like Ellie, when she's in the bunker and they're looking, she's trying to turn the electricity on, and Tim's on the fence, and then suddenly the raptor bursts through the wall, and like all that stuff suddenly becomes the most terrifying experience in the world. Yeah, and because it's so, I suppose you're enclosed, and you're not in an island anymore. You're in this sort of underground bunker. Yeah, and like stuff like that, I absolutely love.
Another thing about Spielberg is he likes to have his real shock moments almost immediately after a laugh or a moment of happiness. Because remember, she says, right after she's turned all of the electricity back on, she's accomplished her mission, I think we're back in business! And then there's the attack.
Yeah.
It's a classic film. There's a lot, weirdly watching it, there's a lot of gumph that he puts in that has no rhyme or reason in the story, though. Like they muck about with a triceratops for hours. And there's nothing happens.
Yeah, I was a little bit disappointed by that, because Triceratops was always my favourite dinosaur as a kid, and it felt like it's a little bit something and nothing. He's there.
It's because they'd already made the Triceratops model, so they'd invested so much money in actually making the Triceratops that they thought, well, we've got to keep it in. There was actually another scene cut out with a baby Triceratops, and I think one of the kids ended up riding it, but that was cut out. But yeah, they had spent so much money. Poor Stan Winston, who was the model maker, had spent so much time making a full body Triceratops that I think they had to keep it in. Yeah.
Well, it's really good that it's there. I just kind of wish it was a bit more active in the story and in the scene.
Yeah.
Right, Luke, let me ask you, any particular moments which stand out or really work for you?
I know we talked about it briefly, but going into more detail, the Velociraptor scene is one of the greatest action sequences, set pieces in cinema history. Just the fact that you've got two kids acting really well, being absolutely terrified and stalked by two velociraptors.
Yeah.
You've got reflective surfaces, and they're sort of surrounded. They're in a kitchen, so you're surrounded by mundane things.
Yes, everyday
things. You've got a ladle that drops, and then and I love that scene where the raptors just runs towards Lex, and it's actually the reflection of her, and gets knocked out.
I'll tell you what I was reminded of watching it again. In The Shining. Remember in The Shining where you have little Danny and he's running down the corridor trying to escape Jack Nicholson, his father, and he hides in what looks like a little oven actually, but obviously it's just a little cupboard.
Yes.
That's very much because it's almost repeated in that bit where Lex is trying to pull down. In the nick of time, pull down the shutter thing. Yeah,
absolutely right. It does. It's very much like that. And Spielberg goes back to uses The Shining again in one of his later movies.
Yeah, obviously they were friends because they worked together on AI, which we will come to in a future episode.
Yeah, and so in Ready Player One, there's a whole sequence dedicated on The Shining. But you've not seen that yet, have you?
No, I haven't seen Ready Player One.
But yes, that very much reminded me of that as well.
Which is the same thing, which is something very powerful and unruly, chasing something very small and vulnerable.
And even some of the raptor claws coming through the doors did feel very, here's Johnny.
It does, yeah. There you go.
So that's my favourite sequence in the whole thing. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And I think those kid actors are some of the best kid performances given in a Spielberg film.
They are good. I would say they're not quite as good as Henry Thomas in E.T.
I think it's a different thing they're asking for him. There's less sort of emotion, isn't there? It's a less personal movie.
That's true.
But no, the little girl Lex is a proper scream queen, isn't she?
Yeah, you do honestly believe they're in sort of danger, to be honest. You do go with them on the ride.
Yeah.
So apparently, I can't remember her name. Who played Lex?
Ariana Richards.
Yeah. Ariana Richards. Apparently, she was cast because she had a blood-curdling scream, and I think Spielberg was watching auditions or something on a tape in his living room, and hers was the only scream which made presumably Kate Capshaw or Amy Irving run through.
It would have been Kate Capshaw at the time.
Kate Capshaw, Steven Spielberg's wife, ran through and thought one of their kids was genuinely in real danger.
Really?
Yeah. So that's what she got cast.
Good. I was watching a documentary, and Fay Wray was on the set. So she was the original Scream Queen from King Kong.
Yeah, wow.
And Spielberg says she's watched your performances. She must have got this from you.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I think the kids are really, really good in it.
Yeah,
and they have to be because Spielberg. I think Spielberg is starting to used a lot of close-ups in this film.
Yeah,
more so than a lot of the shots are just reaction shots to what is going on around it, which generates the tension.
Yeah.
One
thing I remember from the book is they've changed the ages of Lex and Timmy.
Yeah.
Almost swapped them round. She's a really little girl in the book.
Tim's older and Lex.
Tim's older and more knowledgeable.
Yeah.
So apparently Steven Spielberg had auditioned Joseph Mazzello for another film, but he was too young at the time.
Oh, it was Hook, wasn't it?
For Hook, yes. So then when he sort of became the sort of right age to give that performance, in a way it was he was already cast.
Very good.
Swaps the script round.
He does seem to remember people from previous auditions, doesn't he?
He does. Yeah. He was interestingly also going to work with Stanley Kubrick. He was going to make a film.
Joseph Mazzello?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
One of Stanley Kubrick's unmade films.
Sure.
It's called the something or other Papers, which was very Schindler's List-esque.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Schindler's List came out, Kubrick gave up. Basically, thought he was basically making the same film, so that actor didn't get that job.
Okay. Does he? I didn't recognise him from anything else.
He was recently in the most recent thing that you'd recognise him from.
He's still acting then, is he?
He's at either USC or UCLA, arguably the two best film schools in the world.
Sure.
He studied at the directing program there, so he wants to try and be a director.
Okay.
But he is in, sort of in his 20s and stuff, he's in The Social Network.
Is he?
Yeah.
Okay. Ah, very
film
good.
about the founding of Facebook.
He was in The Pacific, the
And
TV series, which was the...
As an older guy?
No, as...
when he's young. Because he was also in the River...
That's the Band of Brothers.
Yeah,
sort
exactly.
of,
The sequel to
and
Band of Brothers.
That was
Steven Spielberg,
wasn't it? Yeah.
Because, of course, he was also in The River Wild.
Was he?
Great,
Okay.
Great film.
I had a quick look at some of the reviews of Jurassic Park at the time, and generally it got very good reviews as being a very good blockbuster. But I wanted to see what some of the criticisms were for the people who didn't actually like it. So I'm going to read a few of them and see what you think. Generally, the negative stuff people have said has come from what they see as a lack of characters and lack of characterization. So this was from the Globe and Mail in Toronto. They said it's perfectly passable kiddie escapism. It has a thrill or two and a chill or three, but it has no poetry, little sense of wonder, no resident subtext, no art. When it's over, it's gone extinct.
I think it's got quite a lot of wonder.
I think it's...
Depends how you define wonder, but it's got awe about it.
Yeah. And
it still has got awe about it.
I don't know how... I just disagree entirely. So it's got, like you said, it's got so many sense of wonder, and when it says there's no subtext at all, I mean, you've got a character who, as part of his dialogue, is explaining chaos theory to the other characters and to the audience.
Yeah.
I think it does.
But also depends on your definition of art. Like, does not a craftsman have a huge amount of artistry?
Mm-hmm.
Is not like a really well-made pair of shoes as artistic as a painter or something. Like, I think there's similarities personally.
Someone had to fill a few column inches.
Yeah, I think so. So, and the other sort of criticism that sometimes gets this is from gets perpetuated. This is from Kenneth Turan at the LA Times. All the imagination and effort, including 18 months of pre-production that went into making the dinosaurs state-of-the-art and exciting, apparently left no time to make the people similarly believable or involving. In fact, when the big guys leave the screen, you'll be tempted to leave the theatre with them. So they felt that the actual characters themselves didn't have much going on for them.
I hope that guy lost his job because he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. It's one of the most exciting films of all time. And also,
but do you think when the dinosaurs leave the screen, it becomes less exciting?
No, because it's exciting to see these guys. Like,
I'm not. By the way, George, I'm not him. So I disagree with him as well.
Break up the headlock, guys.
Yeah. But no, the interesting thing I always thought is the fact that there aren't big names in this thing. Like Sam Neill isn't a film star.
Yes, Spielberg said he already had his star, referring to the T-Rex. To the T-Rex.
Yeah, like none of the Samuel L. Jackson just sits there and smokes fags, which
is
really
that's
interesting.
before he became famous, wasn't it? Yeah,
and he just smokes fags.
Yeah,
and you never see anyone smoking cigarettes on screen without being like a cool dude.
I think anyone who smokes cigarettes and then I don't know if this is true, but anyone who smokes cigarette, you see smoking at the beginning of a sort of action film will die.
Oh really?
Yeah. If anyone's got any examples of that on Twitter,
we don't know if he dies. Though. We know he loses his arm.
We know you're absolutely right.
Well,
we just see an arm.
If he comes back,
he's going to go back for Jurassic World 3. Imagine that. That would be great.
Having done a little bit of research, apparently there was going to be a quite a large sequence with Samuel L. Jackson's character where he was going to be chased and then eventually killed.
Yeah.
But a hurricane hit the island they were filming on and it got scrapped.
Okay, because of timing.
So he did die, but it's just not filmed.
Well, they were going to do the point where you see Dennis Nedry get eaten and the can falls out with all the embryos and it falls down the hill and gets covered in mud. They filmed that very specifically because Steven Spielberg was like, right, this will be the point of the sequel.
Well, that felt like that was being planted for something, didn't it? Yeah.
And he said he spent loads of time trying to get mud that ran like river and covered it up and so cost him a fortune and then.
And also I think there's a clear character arc with Sam Neill's character, with Alan, in the fact that, you know, he hates children to start off with.
Yeah.
And, you know, he starts to become a father figure throughout the whole thing. There's a clear A and a B and a characterization. And Laura Dern's great as Ellie Statler as well.
Yeah.
I mean, Jeff Goldblum doesn't have much else to do beyond, you know, get a broken leg and just be Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, but he's really funny.
But that's so exactly. He doesn't need to be anything beyond that.
He does have a point, because, as in, like, haven't we all been in a situation of high pressure or whatever, and you have that annoying person there who's not really helping
with his top off.
Absolutely,
and that's George in this situation. But he actually, Jeff Goldblum's point of the character, I think he was initially written out of the second draft of the script. They were giving all of his stuff to Sam Neill to say, but then when David Coep came and actually rewrote the script, he brought Malcolm back in.
Yeah, because he's actually pretty close to how Malcolm's described in the book.
He is actually
dressed all in black and quite cynical and.
Doesn't Ian Malcolm die though in the book?
Yes.
Yes, he does, doesn't he?
But then they bring him back for the sequel, and even the author was like, he's only half dead.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like a Princess Bride moment. Yeah. He is only mostly dead.
I've seen worse. Because I think Ian Malcolm is meant to spout the stuff that the author, Michael Crichton, was thinking. He's the vessel for him to speak about, you know, chaos theory and the general themes of the film.
Yes.
They're sort of the morality tale.
Yeah, he's the main character, isn't he, who questions, like, you were too quick to realise you could, that you never stopped to question whether you should.
Exactly.
So that's the moral dilemma that the author's playing with, isn't it?
Exactly, and that's the focus of the book, and they try and bring in here. But I agree that most kids watching it are not taking any of the moral quandary about it at all.
No, he just looks cool.
It just looks cool, exactly, and that's the purpose of it.
Yeah. Nowadays, he doesn't look quite so cool.
Having already mentioned it, the development of the Sam Neill's character, this might be a good chance to talk about Spielbergian themes.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Dad issues.
Yes. So again, it's almost, when you're looking for it, it almost is in every single movie, isn't it?
Yeah. Some degree, varying degrees, but it's nearly always there. Alan Grant in the book likes children and things, so it's definitely something which has been added, presumably by Steven Spielberg.
Yes, yeah, I guess so.
It works.
No, I think it works. You see that relationship develop, and it really does work. And it's that sort of, any of his action movies are all about ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances, isn't it? And that is, I mean, this is sort of a distillation of all of his previous action movies, isn't it? So it's a book, a bestseller that was trimmed down quite a lot, like Jaws.
Yeah.
It's full of tension, like where you don't see a creature, much like Jaws.
Yeah.
You've got, you know, a variety of very cute creatures like E.T. Dilophosaurus reminds me of Gremlins very, very much, which he produced. So,
well, the fact that it's from a child's perspective.
You've got
Timmy and Lex and
yes, exactly. You've got a jungly adventure with lots of perils and gruesome death, like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah,
and you've got that sort of science fiction-y sense of wonder, like you do in Close Encounters. This is like a distillation of all of his films.
Alan Grant, the way he's dressed, especially with the hat, is very Indiana Jones-esque. He would have a Indiana Jones silhouette if someone put a backlight on him.
There's a bit where he actually falls asleep. It's not in this movie. What was the other one he was in? Was he in Jurassic Park 3?
Number 3, yeah.
It was 3. There is a bit, I think, in that movie, and that wasn't Spielberg directed, but where he actually he falls asleep with the Federer over his face like Indiana Jones.
I see.
Yeah.
I think the unspoken hero of this film is Robert Muldoon, who is
Bob Peck.
Just the everything he ever does in this film is wonderful, and it's such a shame he gets eaten.
Is he related to Gregory Peck?
I don't know.
Okay.
I would have thought if I'd never seen the movie before and I would have had to guess, I would have said he would have been a bad guy to start off with. But he's not. He's just an efficient.
He does seem a bit shifty, doesn't he?
He does a bit. He's a bit shifty. Yeah.
He's just sort of sick of all this nonsense and all these. He hates his job, I think.
Exactly.
He doesn't want to be
He's
there.
so sick and tired of Ned. Of Nedry. Yeah. And he's just a guy who just wants to get things
sorted
and go home
about the weather. He loves the weather. such a shame. Because also, annoyingly, like, he knows how these things hunt, and then he should know he's going to get eaten from the side. Like, that's the most
exactly. He says his own mechanism of death, doesn't he, at the beginning?
He does.
Yeah, like he gives him. Yeah, he shoots himself with Chekhov's gun, doesn't he?
Yes. So that's another example of foreshadowing.
Absolutely.
In the build-up, like the Hitchcockian technique we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he was my best action figure.
Was he? Excellent.
Definitely.
We mentioned Wayne Knight as Nedry. Did you know the connection between him and the of his character and the Goonies?
No.
So I'm just gonna show them a picture on my phone, and I will post it on Twitter as well. So there's a little Easter egg in the fact that everything that Nedry wears is the same costume as one of the Goonies kids. Have a look.
Wow. Yes, that's not a coincidence, is it?
Oh.
Yeah,
well, that's fun. Yeah.
So at the beginning, Nedry's wearing a Hawaiian shirt, very similar to what Chunks wears. There's a bit with a grey jacket which looks like Mouth, and then the raincoat is very, very similar to Sean Astin's character in The Goonies. I will post it. It's a good little Easter egg.
The other thing I need to talk to you about is when the helicopter's going down, Alan Grant is having a struggle with his seatbelt.
I have written this down as well.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
And he takes the two female ends and ties them in a knot to secure him. And that is the foreshadowing of the fact that it's all
finds a way.
Women, but they'll make babies and change sexes.
Oh, really? Women inherit the earth, as
yes,
Laura Dern's character says.
Yeah, so I think that's a really because I read that beforehand and then I never noticed it before. Yeah, the fact that he just ties the two female ends of the seatbelt together to do the job for it. Yeah. And then he finds dinosaur eggs, and you know that the females have changed something in which they are able to breed. Yeah. Which is a very clever bit of filmmaking. So do you
think this is a reaction to some of the bad press that Spielberg would have got from Temple of Doom regarding some female characters? I did notice that a bad thing happened to Lex and not Timmy when she got sneezed on.
I'm glad you mentioned that as well. So, but I think obviously Spielberg does have good female characters, but a lot of the awful stuff that the actors have to do happens to the females. So in this one, Lex gets sneezed on by Brachiosaurus.
Yeah, whereas the guys survive that.
Exactly. It is Laura Dern's character that has to sift through a big mountain of Triceratops dung, arm deep into it. In all of the Indiana Jones movies, whether they use rats or bugs or snakes, it's always the female one. I guess apart from River Phoenix and the snakes in the Last Crusade, but generally it's the females who have to
bear the brunt of
these bugs and creatures on it. I'll be interested to see if any more of his female characters do get gunged essentially in the future. It's a bit like Get Your Own Back, isn't it, with Dave Benson Phillips? Yeah. Who knew he'd be making an appearance on this podcast?
I'm so glad he has.
Yeah. So, some little Easter eggs as well.
Yeah.
I like the bit where when the Velociraptors are stalking them right at the end. There's a bit where he goes across a projected screen, and you get it's projected lots of letters over the Velociraptor, and it's just a little light effect.
Yes.
But those letters are all DNA bases, so they are the building blocks of all life going across the Velociraptor's face. I quite like that. So they're all A's, G's, T's, and C's, which are all DNA bases.
I think there is a card.
There's a card. Yes. Joey, you also mentioned the hurricane. So I think the production. So it shut down production for a bit, but I think they also were involved. The cast and crew were on the relief effort on the island.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they stopped production for a period of time and actually just helped. I think Kathleen Kennedy got on a helicopter to one of the main islands to actually call for help and start to organise the relief effort. So, which was very, very efficient and very, very good of her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to use those resources because to be a filmmaker, you just have to. It's just organising stuff. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You might as well put someone who's very good at taking command in place. So.
Yeah, exactly. Shall we talk about the score? Because we actually went to see a actual performance of a live orchestra. I think it was the Czech Philharmonic Orchestra doing it. I think it was.
I'm going to say yes.
Yes.
Unconfidently.
I think it was. So we saw this all done with a live orchestra backing. And there was actually a bit which gave me goosebumps in that. So when they're arriving for the first time on Isla Nublar, and the helicopter sets down, and that's when you first get the big Jurassic Park theme that returns throughout. And just the sense of wonder, they all have. It really gave me sort of shivers. It was very, very exciting.
Because it was very in the moment, wasn't it?
Yeah,
With it being live there, yeah.
Yeah. And it's really good. You do notice, like, the music a little bit. So there's more, like, heavenly orchestral stuff whenever they're seeing dinosaurs for the first time. And that sort of elevates them to more this, like, sort of angelic, like, creature.
Yeah, you do become more aware of the music and the effects it's having and stuff. So I, for example, because a lot of the percussion is right at the back and stuff. So it's almost right by the side of the screen where I was watching. So I was watching them and I was like, oh, I can see that he is literally... playing the heart rhythm.
Yes.
As it's increasing.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I became more aware of the function of the particular different instruments and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So like string instruments, violins are really good for sort of slashing kind of effects.
Yes.
Drums are very good for heartbeats.
Yes.
And that sort of thing. So.
Yeah. You do notice. Well, you notice it when you look down and you see the orchestra play during that section.
Yes, and you're like, oh, that's what they're doing.
That's what they're doing, yeah. But then again, the music does sort of fade, like when you're absorbed in the film, the score just is there in the background and it's not intrusive, it's just there and it adds to the tension perfectly.
Really easy.
Because there were times where we were just not noticing the orchestra at all, but obviously they were contributing quite a lot.
Yeah.
I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? If a good score would be one that you don't think about, it's part of the film, it's part of the storytelling.
Yeah.
You don't want to think, oh, this is an interesting song.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Interesting fact about going back to Sexy Jeff Goldblum again. So, he was flirting, with Laura Dern in that scene,
Yeah, with the water.
Yeah.
On the back of the hand.
They actually ended up, they going out with each other.
They
from 1995 to 1997, according to Wikipedia. So and I think Dern had Goldblum divorced Gina Davis just before that, and Laura Dern had divorced her director husband, and then the director husband, which was Rennie Harlin, and Gina Davis ended up getting married together, and then Laura Dern and they basically partner swapped after Jurassic Park.
That's exciting.
It is exciting.
That's it's like the seatbelts being tied together.
How is it like that?
The two different ends which didn't meet got tied together.
There you go. Poetic. The post-production of this is quite interesting as well, because I think we mentioned on the last Crusade episode that this is one of the years where he made 2 films in 1 year. Yeah. So Schindler's List and Jurassic Park came out in the same year.
So you would still hearing that, you would still think he completely finished one, then started the other one, and that they just happened to be released at the same time. Not the case.
Not at all, no. Because Jurassic Park was such a effects-heavy, big pre- and post-production demands, it ran into his other films. So a lot of the decisions that would have to be made during pre- and post-production were while he was making Schindler's List. And imagine trying to make a dinosaur movie and then a movie about the Holocaust at exactly the same time.
I heard he had Robin Williams phone him up every day to make him laugh.
To cheer him up?
Yeah, to cheer him up.
Schindler's List.
While making Schindler's List, yeah. At the same time, he was listening to the soundtrack for Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
He had cassettes that send over,
I heard a good quote, actually, something along the lines of Schindler's List used every ounce of his intuition, whereas Jurassic Park used every ounce of his craft.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think if you watch those 2 movies, you totally get what he's talking about.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. I completely get what you mean. The actual practicalities of filming the two, of doing them both at the same time, was difficult. So he actually paid $1.5 million a week to a Warsaw TV station to reserve 2 satellite channels, one for the pictures and one for actually sound, in order he could actually use a satellite and then extra to pay for a satellite downlink, so he could actually get all the images and sound transferred from where they were filming over to Warsaw, so he could look at the progress thing people were making.
Wow.
$1.5 million a week.
Wow, to think you could do that for free now.
Exactly, it's absolutely bonkers that this is all pre-internet days. So, and then every weekend and a couple of nights a week, he'd download the dinosaur footage onto video and work with it with Michael Kahn, his editor. And then Michael Kahn would insist then he worked on Schindler's List for a couple of hours after that, so he had Schindler's List on his brain the next morning. And like you said, he would work on the he'd listen to John Williams' score on tapes to see what he'd done. He actually gave John Williams relatively wide berth to actually do what he wants. He's normally quite involved, but said, I don't have the time. You can do what you want.
Yeah.
And then would come fly to Paris at the weekends as well from Krakow in order to work on some of the sound and the animal noises.
It's just incredible the amount of energy the man clearly has.
I know. It's remarkable, isn't it?
To pull both those films off to the quality that he has.
Yeah. Did you read a bit beforehand about what sounds they were using for the dinosaur noises?
No, I know it's a whole bunch of things.
Yeah. Because when of course, I actually was listening out for them, and when you know them, it sounds like it. So the T-Rex was a mixture of sounds, but primarily an elephant. So when it's screaming, that's an elephant blowing its trunk.
Right.
Just like that. Actually, have you seen there's a YouTube clip of a fireman who does a T-Rex impression?
Sounds fun.
With his hose.
So those and the velociraptor noises, they generally use dolphins. They recorded dolphins underwater for a high-pitched sort of scream, and then they had a guttural walrus underneath it. And that's what they used to make the velociraptor scream.
I see.
Which is quite cool.
It definitely works because when the T-Rex screams, it definitely makes you sort of sit up.
This is redefined a blockbuster. And the fact that I think Steven Spielberg came up with the blockbuster, he's just changed. He's changed it from here on in.
Yeah,
completely. The technology and the storytelling have sort of been the playbook for all blockbusters going on, all big summer releases from then on in. So as always, keep an eye on our Twitter page because we're doing the Spielberg tournament where you can choose. We're trying to find out what your favourite Spielberg movie is. Remember, you can always follow us on Twitter at Big Boat Podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at The Bigger Boat Podcast. And if you want to email us and ask us questions about any of the things we've said, you can email us on
thebiggerboatpodcast@gmail.com.
Download and follow George's podcast called The Invisible London, and you can follow him on Twitter at
Invisible LDN, I think. Yeah.
Invisible LDN. Keep an eye on his podcasts, which are very, very good.
Yeah. Rarer than a dinosaur, I think. My podcast. We'll get there.
All right. So next episode, we'll be back next week, and we'll be talking about Schindler's List, which we did mention a little bit here. All right. We will see you next week. So it's a bye from all of us.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.